Before we begin, imagine this. A burning desert, a lone cowboy, and a mysterious Apache woman collapsed under the cruel sun. The moment he tries to help her, she whispers something that freezes him in place. "It's too hot, take off my dress." What happens after that sets off a chain of danger, betrayal, and a connection neither of them expected. This is a story of survival, love, and the wild power of the Western frontier. So before we ride into this adventure, make sure to subscribe, share, and comment to support the channel. Saddle up, take a deep breath, and now let's start this story. The desert sun hung mercilessly overhead, turning the horizon into a wavering sheet of fire as the wind dragged thin lines of dust across the trail. Jake Rydell guided his tired horse along the narrow canyon path, his shirt clinging to him with sweat and the leather reins warm beneath his hands. He had spent weeks drifting across the plains, pushing away memories he didn't want to face, but today the heat wrapped around him like a punishment. Hazel, his loyal mare, let out a restless snort, her ears twitching towards something up ahead. Jake narrowed his eyes, instinct waking inside him as he spotted a still shape lying half-hidden among the brush. He nudged Hazel closer, a quiet tension tightening his jaw. Jake jumped down from the saddle, boots kicking up dust as he approached the figure. A young woman lay there, her skin flushed from the brutal sun, her breathing so faint it almost vanished between the gusts of wind. Her long black hair was tangled with sand, and her traditional Apache dress clung heavily to her overheated body. Jake knelt beside her, pressing 2 fingers to her neck until he found a weak but steady pulse. Heat exhaustion bad, dehydration worse. He uncorked his canteen and let a few drops touch her lips. For a moment nothing happened, then her eyelids fluttered open, revealing striking amber eyes clouded with weakness and suspicion. She stared at him like she wasn't sure if he was real, her breath trembling as she whispered, "You cowboy." Jake nodded, speaking gently, telling her she was safe, trying not to move too fast. She swallowed with difficulty, forcing out a few broken words. "Heated too much, dressed too heavy." And then, with surprising directness, she whispered the sentence that froze him in place. "It's too hot, take off my dress." Jake blinked, unsure he'd heard correctly, but she lifted a shaky hand, clarifying with effort. "Underneath, wrappy cooler. If I keep this dress on, I will suffocate." Her honesty cut through his hesitation. This was no flirtation, this was survival. Jake nodded and carefully loosened the ties at her shoulders, sliding the heavy ceremonial buckskin down enough to let air reach her burning skin. Beneath it, she wore a lighter deerskin wrap, confirming exactly what she had said. Her chest rose with relief as she exhaled a shaky breath, her body finally cooling under the desert breeze. "Thank you," she murmured weakly. "Not many cowboys help my people." Jake simply shook his head, telling her heat didn't care who you were. She gave him a small, tired smile before her eyes drifted closed again, her strength spent. Realizing she wouldn't survive long in the open, Jake lifted her gently into his arms, carried her to Hazel, and secured her carefully before beginning the long ride toward an abandoned mining cabin he'd passed earlier. As they traveled, the woman rested against him, her breaths uneven but improving. Every few minutes she opened her eyes to look at him, studying his face with quiet curiosity. "What's your name?" Jake asked softly, keeping her steady. "Nayeli," she whispered. "It means I love you." Jake nearly coughed, recovering as she added faintly, "Not for you, for the land, for the wind. Maybe for you later, Cowb." Even in weakness she had spirit, and Jake found himself smiling despite the situation. By the time they reached the cabin, the sky was painted deep orange with dusk, and shadows stretched long and thin across the desert floor. Inside the cabin, Jake lit a fire and set water to heat. Nayeli lay on the old cot, watching him with wary but soft eyes, trying to steady her breathing. "You are kind," she murmured. "Kindness is rare." Jake didn't know how to respond, so he focused on checking her pulse, her temperature, anything to ensure she was recovering. She told him quietly that she wasn't lost, she was running. A white trader named Cole Maddox had lied, trying to accuse her of theft so he could claim her as payment. Her people defended her, and Maddox returned with guns, forcing her tribe to scatter. Jake felt anger flicker inside him at the mention of the name. He knew Maddox, and his reputation was fouler than desert rot. Night settled over the canyon, and Jake took a seat by the door with his rifle resting across his lap. Inside, the fire crackled softly, its glow casting warm shadows across Nayeli's face. She slept fitfully, murmuring in Apache as if trapped in memories she could not shake. When she jolted awake in fear, Jake moved quickly to her side, telling her she was safe, that he was watching over her. She reached for his hand without hesitation, gripping his fingers as though anchoring herself to the present. Jake stayed there until her breathing slowed again, feeling an unexpected pull toward her honesty and bravery. At sunrise, Jake stepped outside to check their surroundings. The moment he saw fresh hoofprints leading toward the cabin, his stomach tightened. Maddox's men, they were close, too close. He hurried inside and told Nayeli they needed to move. Before they could leave, the ground trembled with approaching horses. Dust clouds rolled in through the trees. Maddox's voice thundered from outside, demanding Jake hand Nayeli over. Jake's jaw locked. He pushed Nayeli behind him just as gunfire tore through the cabin walls, splinters flying. He fired back, getting her toward the back exit as bullets sliced through the air. They crawled up a rocky incline while the cabin behind them exploded with gunshots. Nayeli pointed out a narrow cliff pass her people used for hunting. Together they reached it, sending rocks tumbling down and blocking the riders who pursued them. Jake took a bullet graze to the shoulder but pushed forward, refusing to slow down. When they reached higher ground, Nayeli tore a strip from her wrap to bandage his wound. "You saved my life," she whispered. Jake tried to brush it off, but she looked at him with a depth that made his heartbeat shift. "Not even close," she murmured. Before Jake could respond, a rifle shot cracked through the air. Maddox himself appeared, fury radiating off him. The real fight was only just beginning. And neither Jake nor Nayeli had any idea how dangerous the next few moments would become. Maddox dismounted with a thud, kicking dust, as he marched forward with a twisted grin that made Jake's grip tighten around his empty revolver. Jake shoved Nayeli slightly behind him. Trying to shield her from the outlaw's furious gaze, Maddox spat in the dirt, shouting that the girl belonged to him, that her tribe owed him, that the land itself bowed to his will. Nayeli stepped forward despite Jake's warning hand, her chin raised boldly. "I belong to no one," she said fiercely. Maddox's rage boiled over. He lunged at her, knife flashing in the sunlight. Jake intercepted him, blocking the strike with his forearm and forcing Maddox backward with sheer strength. The two men stumbled across the rocky ground, exchanging blows with raw power and desperation. Maddox swung wildly, his anger giving him reckless force, while Jake fought with purpose, protecting Nayeli with every punch. The cliff winds howled around them, carrying dust across their faces as the fight grew more violent. Maddox tried again to stab him, but Jake knocked the knife away with a swift kick. It clattered toward the edge of the cliff. Maddox snarled and tackled Jake, sending them rolling dangerously close to the drop. Nayeli gasped, gripping her stone blade tightly, torn between fear and instinct. Maddox slammed Jake's head against the ground, but before he could strike again, Nayeli rushed forward. She grabbed Maddox's arm, twisting it with quick, practiced movements passed down through her tribe. Maddox roared in pain as Jake used the moment to swing upward, punching him hard across the jaw. Maddox collapsed to the ground, dazed and gasping. Jake rose slowly, breathing heavily, dirt clinging to his shirt, blood dripping from his shoulder. He stared down at Maddox, who crawled backward, reaching desperately for anything to defend himself. Nayeli stepped beside Jake, her stone blade glinting near Maddox's throat. "If you ever return to my people," she said steadily, "you will not leave alive." Fear flickered at last in Maddox's eyes. Jake lifted him by the collar, dragging him to his horse and shoving him into the saddle with one final warning. "If I see you again, I'll bury you in this canyon myself." Maddox stared at them with pure hatred, but fear kept him silent. He yanked the reins and fled, the sound of hooves fadding across the rocky plains until the desert swallowed him whole. Jake stood still for a moment, letting the dust settle over the ridge as exhaustion washed over him. He turned toward Nayeli, expecting fear or doubt, but she stepped closer and placed a gentle hand against his jaw where Maddox had struck him. Her touch softened the harshness of the morning. "You fought for me," she whispered, "for my people." Jake swallowed, brushing back a loose strand of her hair. "I didn't fight for your tribe," he said quietly. "I fought for you." A shy smile touched her lips, and she glanced down, her long lashes casting shadows on her cheeks. For the first time since he found her in the desert, she allowed herself to truly breathe. Jake exhaled too, the tension easing from his shoulders. Then, with a warmth that surprised them both, she leaned in and kissed him softly, a slow, sweet moment shaped by everything they had survived together. They returned to her tribe by noon, walking through the canyon until the sound of drums and murmured prayers reached them. When the Apache people saw Nayeli, cries of joy rose across the camp. Mothers hugged her, children gathered around her, and elders offered blessings in soft tones. Her father, tall and strong with silver streaking his dark hair, approached with eyes filled with relief and pride. Nayeli embraced him tightly before introducing Jake with quiet sincerity. "He saved my life," she said. Her father bowed his head gratefully toward Jake, offering him the respect rarely given to any outsider. "Our land remembers kindness," the chief said, "and so do we." Jake felt unfamiliar warmth in his chest as the tribe welcomed him. They treated his wound, fed him, and thanked him with gestures that felt deeper than words. He watched Nayeli speak with her people, the strength in her posture returning, her laughter lightening the air. When she returned to him later, she sat beside him near the river, her feet skimming the surface of the cool water. "This river is home," she said softly. "My father feared Maddox would force us to leave it. Now we have peace again." Jake nodded, watching the sunlight dance across her face. "You gave them that peace," he said. "You're braver than you think." Nayeli turned toward him, her expression warm. "And you're kinder than you let yourself believe." Jake glanced away, unused to such praise, but she gently lifted his chin, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You didn't have to stop when you saw me," she whispered. "Many men would have ridden past." Jake exhaled slowly, the memory still vivid in his mind. "I don't know why I stopped," he admitted. "Something in me just knew I had to. Something in me wouldn't let me leave you." Her eyes softened as she leaned closer, their foreheads touching in quiet connection, their breaths mixing with the sound of the flowing river. As evening settled over the camp, the tribe gathered for a small celebration in honor of Nayeli's return. Drums echoed through the valley, fires crackled, and children danced with bright feathers in their hair. Jake stood near the edge of the gathering, watching the joy, unsure if he truly belonged. He was a cowboy, a wanderer, a man with no roots. But when Nayeli walked toward him, her hand extended, her smile inviting, something inside him shifted. She took his hand, pulling him gently into the circle of music and firelight. The tribe welcomed him without hesitation, and slowly, Jake allowed himself to relax, the warmth of the moment sinking into him. Later, when the stars were high and the fire burned low, Jake and Nayeli walked alone along the ridge overlooking the valley. The air was cool, the scent of sage drifting through the night wind. Nayeli stopped and turned to face him fully. "Will you leave tomorrow?" she asked, her voice quiet but steady. Jake hesitated, the question hitting him harder than he expected. He had spent his whole life drifting, never staying long enough for anything to take root. But as he looked into Nayeli's amber eyes, he felt something anchor him in place. "I don't want to leave," he admitted. Nayeli stepped closer, her fingers trailing gently down his arm. "Then stay," she whispered. "Stay with me, stay with my people. The future is not written on the wind. You can choose your place." Jake felt emotion rise in his chest stronger than he'd felt in years. He cupped her face gently, brushing his thumb along her cheek. "I choose you," he said quietly. Her breath caught just before he kissed her again, deeper than before, a promise sealed beneath the endless western sky. The wind carried their whispers, the stars witnessed their choice, and somewhere in the silence of the canyon, the land itself seemed to welcome the beginning of their story.